At Rebel One Financial, we have the cheetah spirit, that drive to move forward, be sharp, and deliver on what's next. I'm Mark Zesbaugh, Chairman and CEO of Rebel One Financial. We built this company to move with that same energy, to always be agile, nimble, and execute at the highest level, redefining how people feel, think, and experience retirement solutions. Rebel One Financial is a national insurance company providing retirement solutions in 49 states, rated to provide financial professionals and their clients with outstanding products, service, and flexibility to embrace retirement boldly. So whether you're building your business or planning your future, don't stand still. Go find your cheetah spirit and unleash it. To learn more, visit rebelonefinancial.com.
Hello, and welcome to the DSM Wealth Podcast, sponsored by Rebel One Financial, which is here to revolutionize how people feel, think, and experience retirement solutions. I'm your host, Susanna DeBaca, and I'm so glad that you are here with us. On this show, we explore and redefine our relationship with wealth, what it means, how we build it, and how it can help us live with purpose. Each month, I talk with leaders across finance, academia, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy to uncover practical insights on creating prosperity and meaning. Today's episode is called Money Talks, Healthy Conversations for Today's Families. We're going to be exploring one of the most important and often most delicate elements of personal finance and wealth, how families communicate about money. From aligning values to reducing conflict, I hope that this conversation is going to highlight clear, intentional communication and how it can strengthen both relationships and long-term financial health. I mean, who has not struggled at some point in time to have a good conversation with their spouse, their partner, their parents, or their children about money? I'm delighted today to be joined by three outstanding leaders who bring deep expertise and heart to this discussion. First, I want to introduce Kim Stamatelos, who is, hi Kim.
Hello, Susanna. So great to be here.
Welcome. She is a nationally respected attorney, mediator, and author with more than 4 decades of experience guiding families through complex transitions with both empathy and clarity. And Kim is widely recognized for her belief that the law can and should be a healing profession. Welcome, Kim.
Thanks again.
Next, I'm very pleased to introduce Ashlee Vieregger. She's a senior lead advisor at the Foster Group, where she partners with ultra-high net worth families across generations to navigate their financial lives with intention and trust. And Ashlee's people-centered approach emphasizes meaningful dialogue as the cornerstone of lasting wealth. So glad you can be here with us, Ashlee.
Thank you, Susanna. It's great to be here for this conversation. It's going to be fun this morning.
Wonderful. And finally, I'm thrilled to have Abby Croll with us. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Susanna. Glad to be here.
Abby is a tax partner with Eide Bailly, where she specializes in tax compliance and consulting, working mainly with flow-through entities and their related corporate and owner tax planning, including advising high net worth individuals and families on sophisticated tax and estate planning strategies. She is known for her collaborative style, and she helps families align their technical expertise of tax with their real life goals. So thank you for being here, Abby.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Such an impressive group and such an important topic. I want to be clear that nothing that we talk about today is actual investment advice or legal advice. If you need that, definitely talk to your advisor, your attorney, or your tax professional. But let's just go ahead and dive in. So I'd love to hear each of you talk a little bit about your background and why you're interested in this. And let's start with Ashlee, if you're good with that. Ashlee?
You bet. Well, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because as a financial advisor working with multi-generational families, I am on the front lines of facilitating healthy dialogue between generations. There's a myth that good communication happens across parent to child, back up to parent. And when a lot of my client families walk in the door, they think they have an investment problem, but what they really have is a communication problem. So I'm thrilled to be here for this discussion.
I love that, and we're all nodding. Kim, tell us a little bit about you and why you care about this.
I come at it through both a professional and personal angle. Professionally, I'm sitting in the chair across from people whose lives are exploding and the finances are about to be split up and divided up, and we have to have the difficult discussion that sometimes hasn't been had before. From a personal perspective, interestingly, I was brought up with a father who was a compulsive gambler. And he spoke about this publicly before his death and was very active in recovery in that. And so I also come at it because growing up, I had to unravel childhood wounds around my thoughts about money. So that's why this subject in particular is so dynamic in my life.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Very powerful to have that personal experience that you can bring to conversations with your clients. Abby, what about you?
Sure. I can't agree more with what both of these women have said already. And I think, kind of going along with Ashlee, I think communication is key, and just frequent communication with businesses, with families. Working in public accounting for over 20 years, I think I've seen a lot of people make kind of good and bad decisions, and what you can do up front to help with that definitely goes a long way in your planning. But also personally, I have 3 kids, one that's getting ready, in a couple years to head off to college, and then 2 that are younger, and just trying to instill good values in them on spending, saving, that kind of stuff. Because, I think we've all seen people through college and otherwise that, made bad decisions with debt or whatever it may be. And, just took years and years for them to get out of that. So I have, both a professional and a personal interest in this area.
Well, it's a real thing. Talking about money is so important, but it can be so hard. So what makes conversations about money so emotionally charged in modern families? And what are some of the tools, I guess, that can help ease that? Let's start with you, Kim.
Well, I think one thing is that there's just an overarching scarcity mentality in our society. I don't eat enough protein, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough whatever. And so we're all operating under this lack of enough. And so we really never have a thoughtful conversations with ourselves or our loved ones about what is enough. I think that's one issue. The other issue is that most of us avoid difficult conversations. And that's understandable because we aren't trained in how to do them. They bring up emotion. They bring up all sorts of wounding that we've had in our lives. They're just a potpourri of all sorts of things. And to sit down and do it, we don't have any skill. And I would even say, lawyers don't even have that skill. We're taught to advocate and win and argue and negotiate. So 15 years ago, when we started Iowa Collaborative Divorce, we had to teach the lawyers that we're going to be more collaborative in these divorces to undo what they know. So this is, again, we're all in this together. We really don't have any good grounding in how to do this.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Ashlee, what about you? Why is this so hard?
It is incredibly hard, and I couldn't agree more with what Kim shared. And I would add on to that most people are raised with a belief from childhood that talking about money is rude or impolite or tacky or wrong or reprehensible. And so a lot of us internalize that kind of a belief from a very young age. And so when we grow up having a negative emotion around talking about money and we haven't practiced, of course, the resulting behavior from those beliefs and those emotions is going to be avoidance. We have to break down that taboo. We have to be more willing to engage with money conversations. And the only way to do that effectively is simply to practice. So if we can become more fluent and build more rhythm and repetition and confidence, we don't have to have perfect conversations about money. They're going to be awkward and stilted and maybe a little uncomfortable at the outset, simply because we're rusty, not because we're bad at it. It's unfamiliar, not wrong or beyond our capabilities, but we have to address that taboo head on and say, what am I going to do to counteract that? For a lot of people, that's tough. For a lot of my clients, that's tough. And that's where working with an advisor or having someone to model or facilitate healthy conversations can just be truly a game changer.
Great point, Abby. What do you think you see from the tax side? What makes it so emotionally charged?
Well, and I don't know if this is tax specific or just more general, but I think, money is how people keep score kind of in today's world. And, there's all the wants and the needs out there. So everybody has their desires. And, when I look at it from a corporate standpoint, how most businesses deal with it as budgeting early in the year and kind of planning for that. And I think, what we need to do more personally is follow those same patterns, in January or even December and this is a great time of the year to set your budget for the coming year, personally look at, what are our wants and needs as a family and things like that. And, even something as simple as that, I think can help a long way for families with, all different types of wealth.
So I'm hearing a lot of different things that it's charged because money's got a lot of stigma or baggage around it. It's a scorecard. We're not used to talking about it. In fact, we're maybe avoid talking about it. So a lot of this kind of is around communicating your values and what you want. Ashlee, can you talk a little bit about how families can bring their values into the financial decisions to help ease that tension?
You bet. I am a huge proponent in the work that we do with clients of holding what's called a family meeting. And this broadly falls into the arena of a very interesting part of our practice called family governance. So just as Abby was speaking about how corporations manage their finances, how do families do this really effectively? Our most intentional families are committed to having a family meeting maybe once a year. And we usually start with values and how we communicate those both as individuals and as a family group. An excellent place to start with this is philanthropy, because we all have causes and things that we care about. And those usually have a deep personal connection to what we've experienced or who we want to support. And so when we can discover, well, these are my values as an individual, these are our shared family values, how are we expressing generosity through that lens to really make our philanthropy aligned with what is most important to us as a family group? It is an excellent entry point into having a money conversation without it feeling difficult or charged or complicated or scary. Because generosity makes us feel good. It feels good to help out those causes and organizations that we care about, whether it's with dollars or volunteer time or our professional influence or skill. And when we see families really make that connection between this is what's important to us, this is how we express it charitably, and we're going the next step to talk about it together as a family, you're really building that sense of comfort and confidence and repetition and getting in the habit. And so if you do that once and then you make a commitment to coming back to it once a year or every few years, you're really having such a different result and a lot of opportunity to break down some of those stigmas and to make those conversations easier. So I'm a huge proponent of engaging in that kind of very intentional activity as a family. And as an advisor, I facilitate that kind of conversation with the families that we work with all the time.
So you're sort of saying, start with the North Star, start with the stuff that may be a little bit easier, and then normalize some of these conversations.
Exactly. Let's wade into the shallow end first before we're cannonball off the deep end when we don't know how to swim.
So, Abby, where do you see families getting tripped up the most when they don't communicate clearly about financial decisions or issues?
I think it's probably taking on debt and maybe not being open with your significant other if, what level of credit card debt you have. Maybe you both know that you have a home equity line, but you haven't maybe told your significant other how much you've drawn on that. I feel like debt seems to be the issue with most of the kind of awkward decisions or awkward discussions, because then it may come to, sending a kid to college or buying a new home or retiring. And it's like, well, we probably have to get this paid off first before we can, proceed with something further. So I think, and it all goes back to be open communication, just communicating on decisions like that. And, I think financial advisors, CPAs, who, probably any of the professional advisors on this call, are good to sit down with somebody like that once a year and just go through kind of your own personal balance sheet to, so everybody in the family, maybe not necessarily the kids, but at least both spouses are on the same page as to where you are, from your total financial picture.
And Abby, you're talking sort of more, everyday Americans, but right. Even for a lot of our audience that is wealthier, debt is still a very big issue. Risk is still a very big issue. Kim talked about gambling, but another thing, that's a real trigger is also inheritance and estate planning, how people pass things down. So just thinking it, regardless of whether you're wealthy or whether you're beginning, these issues are kind of across all types. So Kim, let's get into what does healthy transparency actually look like? When or where is openness most beneficial? And then what's too much detail?
Well, I want to say that I agree with what Abby was saying about, just having the conversations about debt in particular. I'm thinking of a time when I was doing a mediation and a soldier came in his fatigues. He'd been deployed, he came back, and he was getting divorced, and his wife and her lawyer were in the other room. And all of a sudden, I brought in, okay, here's all the debt you have. And he was flabbergasted. He said, what are you talking about? I've been giving and sending all of my paycheck to my wife, but she had been spending it all and then accumulating additional debt. And that man began to shake to the point where we had to call the paramedics and have him wheeled out of my office. Now, again, with the idea that many in our listening audience are wealthy, all of our family members or all of their family members are not. And so I think most all of us are thinking of those family members that maybe are not good with money, or I'm thinking about my elderly aunt. And so part of what we can do to have the transparency is begin with people in our orbit and just say, hey, we want to have this conversation. Would you be willing to have this conversation? And that's when everything's going to erupt, and all the wounds and all of the drama is going to erupt. And then say, how about if we ask, at least initially, somebody to help us, to coach us, to facilitate that first conversation, like Ashlee was talking about, or like for what I do in mediation is I'm going to sit down and we're going to model what that looks like, and then give you some tools that you can take back and talk yourselves, and then you can come for a checkup or a check-in. So when is too much? I think too much is if you want to throw all your spreadsheets on the board and tell your spouse, this is what we have and this is what we do and here's a 401k, and start using monetary lingo that person doesn't know. If somebody is really out of the mix, and I see this in a lot of marriages where husband has always taken care of everything, wife doesn't know anything about anything, they just know money's coming in and we got what we need and money's going out, that would shut somebody down. So approaching it kindly, compassionately, understanding, I think somebody said it earlier, you've got to start slow.
Mm-hmm. Those are great strategies, which sort of segues into my next question for each of you is, what are a couple of strategies that multi-generational families can start thinking about to be better at communicating? So Ashlee, what are your thoughts? What are some things you've seen work?
For a lot of the families that we're serving, we may sit down with them 4 times a year as a married couple to go over the state of the finances, what's going on with the estate plan, are there law changes or new developments that would cause us to adjust their plan. And that's just for, a married couple, a small family unit in a broader multi-generational family. Then we want to encourage the family group, the broader group of the parents, the adult children, potentially the spouses, to get together for that family conversation once a year for maximum effect. Because I think it's very easy for elder generations to think that they've been very clear and I've communicated what's going on and what my values are and what my wishes are and what my hopes are and what my concerns are. But what we hear from the younger generations is that message has been received piecemeal or incomplete or not at all. So if we're not carving out dedicated time for those family groups to gather and have that dialogue, we're really not getting the full scope of those desired communications. So I'm not talking about do this after the Thanksgiving pumpkin pie has been cut and we're watching football. I'm talking a dedicated, a specific, an intentional space just for those kinds of conversations. And we see this work really well with, matriarchs and patriarchs who are in their 60s and 70s, and the adult children are in their, 30s, 40s, 50s. This kind of dialogue is really priceless. And you can start with the lighter, the happier, the more fun topics. And then you can start to make your way once you have some repetitions and some confidence into, here's what we're thinking about for the family business. I've got one child active in it and one child not. How do I be equitable in how my estate plan is divided to account for those realities? Here's a law change that has precipitated a change with our wills and trusts. It's important that we communicate that to you kids now while we're living and can tell that story so that some imagination isn't being used to fill in the gaps when mom and dad are no longer here. Mm-hmm. So building that intentional space is just really key, and committing to it year in and year out is the best way to facilitate that healthy dialogue on a sustainable basis.
That's great advice. Abby, what are some strategies on your end?
And I can't agree more with what Ashlee has said. And I think just to kind of add to that, those family meetings are important, but also making sure you have the right professional advisors involved in those too. I think, sometimes we've run into situations where we'll learn after the fact that, the financial advisor said one thing, the tax advisor said a different thing, and they didn't work together. And I know, Ashlee and I are in a lot of those, conversations together with mutual clients. So really getting all parties involved, I think, helps to just make sure you're looking at it from different aspects and, that the family's involved too. And I think, you think of this group and think, we're just reporting on the numbers and where they are. But really, for these families that have multi-generation wealth and things like that, I think it's, really looking at the goals. What do they want to happen to the family business? Do they have charitable intent? Are trusts needed for future generations or for, grandchildren and later on in life? So, yeah, again, just those planning meetings, but including all the right parties, I think are key.
Excellent.
Couldn't agree more, Abby, about the importance of having that professional team surrounding the client. When the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, the client has the best outcome. So well said.
Mm-hmm. Kim, what would you add?
Well, I'm going to take it from the personal perspective. And Abby said something earlier about training your children. Again, from my personal story, it was important. I understand what I don't transmit, what I don't transcend or transform, I'm going to transmit. So I knew early on money dysfunction was something I did not want to leave as a legacy in my family. And likewise, money understanding, awareness. You don't have to have mastery, but awareness is something that each of us should leave for our children, particularly when they have been raised in a wealthy environment. They may just think that wealth is always going to be there. And of course, I see, down the line, sometimes that isn't the case. So, telling your children, okay, we're going to give you an allowance and you get to buy something with it. I mean, starting when they're little. Also, talking to them. I know recently I said to my adult children, I want to show you everything I have. And I want to tell you, what my life expectancy is. And I just want you to know. And so they looked at it all. And they've been raised with money awareness. And they said, Mom, we want to tell you, we want you to die with zero. We don't expect an inheritance from you, but we also notice you have long-term health insurance. And we want to let you know that if anything ever comes up that you can't afford that premium, you need to tell us, because that's something that's going to impact us as you age. And so thank you for telling it. My son-in-law went to have this. Oh, he said, this is so great. I'm going to go have the same discussion with my parents. And they're like, what in the H are you talking about? How dare you ask us this? And totally shut down. So again, we all start where we start. There's opportunities all along the spectrum. But the most important thing is jump in somewhere and start small.
Well, excellent. We could talk about this all day long. I wish we had more time, but let's just do quick takeaways, 30 seconds. Just what's the advice that you have for viewers about great money communication? And Abby, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think we've all said this, but communication is key. Reset your financial goals. I would say at least annually, but especially if you have big life changes. And going along with what Kim was talking about, start early with your family. I think we've talked with our kids for a long time about the save bucket, the spend bucket, and the share bucket. So, those are basic preschool concepts, but can go through all levels of life.
That's wonderful. Kim, what are your parting thoughts?
Life is going to throw you a curveball, or maybe 4 or 5. And I see people with curveball after curveball in my office, and divorce being the biggest one. And the statistics are staggering, particularly when it comes to women. The average woman's household income drops 40% after divorce, and that's nearly double the percentage of decline for men. 1 out of 5 women falls into poverty as a direct result of divorce. And 20% of women 65 and older, and gray divorce is the big thing now, people getting divorced after 40, 50 years of marriage. 20% of women 65 and older who are divorced live in poverty. And a lot of these women have had coercive control, and men too, of finances, meaning their spouse just gave them an allowance or whatever. So don't wait till you get to that point and then go, what am I going to do? It's too late to recover. Start now.
Mm-hmm. Start now. I love that. Ashlee, what are your quick takeaways?
Building on what Abby and Kim shared, I think having agency in your own financial position is incredibly powerful, whether you're a woman in younger years or in your retirement or navigating a curveball, super critical. And I think having good money conversations and being willing to be open and vulnerable about what you're going through, what you're worried about, is key to having community and gaining confidence. That's what a lot of my clients are seeking in an uncertain world, is confidence. So we have to get better at this as a group. We need to start small, and we can do that just by simply having conversations. Ask a friend for a money story. What was your first job? Ask a friend for a money tactic. How do you approach a big purchase? Ask a friend for a reflection. What was the scariest financial decision you made, and what was the outcome? these are ordinary conversations we can have over coffee. It doesn't have to be a meeting in an advisor's office with a formal agenda and a professional setting. It can be informal. And that's the place to start, is to simply have those kinds of dialogues to build that sense of agency and empowerment and confidence.
Well, such good advice. The things that I'm taking away from the conversation is know and be clear with yourself what your values and your goals are. Communicate often. Start with the good stuff, the easy stuff like giving or everyday things. Then you can move to the harder things. Get a professional advisor. You need a whole team, a financial advisor, a tax advisor, and legal advisors can help you navigate these conversations. But if you normalize the conversation and talk often with friends and family and practice, it gets easier over time. And then one of the things that Kim stated that I loved was really think about leaving a legacy of good financial habits and communications, because your family will learn from you. So I want to thank each one of you, exceptional panelists, for your insights. We're so glad that you could join us. And thanks to all of you for tuning into this episode of the DSM Wealth Podcast presented by Rebel One Financial, here to revolutionize how people feel, think, and experience retirement solutions. For more information about Rebel One Financial, visit rebelonefinancial.com. Next time, tune in where we're going to be discussing how sustainable and values-based investing can drive strong returns and meaningful impact. So thanks for tuning in and have a great day.